Welcome to another installment of 15 Minutes with Andy as we try to dig into some stories here in Northwest Ohio and bring guests in that we think that are really good stories for people to check in on here in Northwest Ohio for a variety of reasons. And our main goal at the end is to leave you feeling a little bit better than when you came to the podcast today. So we certainly appreciate you tuning in. Our guest this time is Dave Swanson, who is the founder, many maybe do know, maybe don't know, the founder of Davlin here in Bryan. But there's more to Dave's story than just Davlin. But even in that, that's your happy anniversary, just beyond 40 years with Davlin, right, Dave?
It'll be 41 years in October of this year.
Wow. Congratulations. Did you ever think that, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but did you ever think it'd be 40 years with this company?
Well, I kind of hope so.
Yeah. But that's not where your story begins. And I want to kind of get that. For those that don't know you, where does Dave Swanson's story begin?
Well, as far as Bryan, Ohio, I answered an ad in the Wall Street Journal back in 1977. So I've been here in Bryan, Ohio for probably 45 years, probably almost to the day or two. It was mid-April of 1977 when I moved to Bryan, Ohio.
Where were you born and raised? Where do you come from?
I was born in Grayling, Michigan, lived in Lewiston, Michigan for the first 2 or 3 years of my life. And then my father bought a farm near St. John's, Michigan. So I was raised in near St. John's on a dairy farm.
Okay. So as you're making your way through school, did Dave know what he wanted to do at the completion of high school?
No. I certainly wasn't one of those people like a lot of school teachers, engineers, doctors, and so forth that knew what they wanted to do. I had no clue what I wanted to do. And sometimes I joke, I'm 73 years old and I still don't know what I want to do for a living. But no, I was one of those people that just sort of fell into through what I wound up doing for my life.
Okay. So you graduate from high school. Where does life's journey take you after high school?
I went to Olivet College in Olivet, Michigan for 2 years, and then I've always had wanderlust. And so I thought that the Pacific Northwest would be a great place to go. They said it was nice and warm and that I could have the roof down on my convertible all year long. They had obviously never been to the Pacific Northwest. It rains most of the time. But I transferred to the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington, and got a bachelor's degree there.
Okay. Well, first job, what did you do coming right out of there?
Well, my first job coming right out of there was 4 years in the United States Navy. So my career was postponed for 4 years.
Okay. What was your Navy time like?
I was basically the choice of going in the Navy or be drafted, so I'm not one of these heroic guys. No one should thank me for my service. In fact, I don't like to be thanked for my service because I did it kind of against my will. But, I spent 4 years in the Navy in Norfolk, Virginia, buried down and underground in a top secret naval communication station. Never left. So it was fun. It was probably the last time in my life where there was absolutely no pressure to do anything or to excel or anything like that. So it was an okay 4 years.
Well, what's your takeaway from your time there? I guess what was the biggest learning tool for you from that time?
That I didn't want to be in the military for the rest of my life.
Some people just know that right away.
Yeah, I've got a prickly personality, and probably prickly personalities, unless you're the admiral, don't work very well in the Navy. So, but met a lot of good friends. I'm still friends with some of the people. I'm Facebook friends with a guy that I met in the first couple of days when I was in the Navy. So. No particular takeaway.
Okay. So once you get through Navy life, what is that first job for you, and when did this happen?
Well, I got out of the Navy after 4 years, and I went to the Thunderbird Graduate School of International Management. Okay. I got an MBA in international trade. While I was in college, when I was a high school kid, my folks sent me to work on a farm in Switzerland. And that was kind of a pivotal moment in my life. I just absolutely love being overseas. I love the power of being able to speak in a foreign language, even though I couldn't speak it very well. And so when I was at the University of Puget Sound, one of the professors mentioned a school down in Arizona that specialized in training people to work in international trade. And so for the first time in my life, I thought, oh, wow, somebody might pay me to travel overseas or to live overseas. And so I was immediately attracted to Thunderbird, got accepted, and spent a year there in Glendale, Arizona, and got basically an MBA in international trade.
What do you do what's a degree in international trade give you?
Thunderbird was a very, very practical school. So they weren't like a Harvard MBA where you do a lot of case studies and so forth. The school was basically taught by former executives in international trade. For instance, the past president of Polaroid International. So it was a very pragmatic approach. How do I get a bushel of wheat from Kansas to Lagos, Nigeria? How do I get a car part from Detroit to Belgium and get paid for it? It's a very, very practical how you do things, how you get customers, how you ensure that your trademarks are taken care of, and a very practical lessons on basically how to function in international trade. And that education has stood me very, very well.
Dave, how long did you stay in that career, in that business?
For the rest of my life.
Basically, yeah.
For the rest of my life. I mean, a huge emphasis at Davlin has always been our international business. One of the things that I was taught at Thunderbird, and Thunderbird's fairly well known around the world. I mean, you go to any of the big business hotels in downtown Santiago, Chile, Buenos Aires, there's a good chance you're going to meet somebody that graduated from Thunderbird. But I was taught that as long as your business was made up of a diverse, about 25% of your business was a diverse number of international customers, you'd never have a recession. So we've always tried to stick with that, to make sure that we had a lot of international customers at Davlin. And truly, the only recessions that Davlin has ever had have been caused by me, not externally.
Okay. So, but in between starting in international trade and founding Davlin, you did something else for a job,
yes,
right?
I left. I got my degree, and the first job that I had was as an international trade expert with the state of Michigan, and I was only there for 8 or 9 months. Really, really wanted to be involved with a company. Went to work for a company called Ashland Chemical Company down in Dublin, Ohio. Worked there for about a year and was fired. Still don't know why, but it's just a fact. And that's sort of informed my life. Having been fired, I don't find it wildly difficult to fire people when it's necessary to do it, but that's kind of outside the story. Left the Ashland Chemical Company, spent several months looking for a job, and then finally answered that ad in the Wall Street Journal for a small company in Bryan, Ohio called Elder Pharmaceuticals.
And there are certain images that people have, I think, of pharmaceuticals, that business, the pharmaceutical sales. What's your take on it from the inside now?
Well, pharmaceuticals is just an absolutely wonderful business to be in. I certainly didn't know this when I accepted the job. It was kind of in the middle of a recession and so forth, and I was having trouble finding a job, so I would have taken any job, a buggy whip manufacturer, probably. But I was lucky, and luck plays a tremendous part in life, in my personal opinion. But I was lucky. The ad was for a pharmaceutical company. And there's just, even in a small company like Elder Pharmaceuticals, there's just a phenomenal amount of money and influence in the pharmaceutical business. So it's a wonderful business to be in.
Is it, and there are maybe some people that are listening to this podcast are thinking maybe they have a different perspective. Maybe theirs is a negative connotation with pharmaceuticals.
Well, I could certainly believe that. I mean, there's a lot of greed in the pharmaceutical business. There's a lot of opportunism. The pharmaceutical executives all have kind of pat phrases that they use. Oh my gosh, the cost of research and development, and 80% of the research that we do fails, and we have to recover the cost of the failures and the price of our successes and so forth. And yes, no. Maybe there's a lot of money in pharmaceuticals. None of those people are poor. Just a perfect example was Oxorlin. It was the primary growth factor for Elder Pharmaceuticals back then. They were the first company to develop a product for Puva. And when I was there, it cost us maybe a couple of dollars to produce 100 capsules of oxorolin. And the boss, immediately, a new boss came along and immediately tripled the price on it. And I know that when the Elder Pharmaceutical Company was eventually sold, it still cost just pennies to make those capsules, but they raised the price to $1,000 a bottle because they could, because it was exclusive. So, the pharmaceutical industry, it's an important industry. They do lots of wonderful things, but there's certainly a lot of money in it.
What was there a tipping point that got you away from that and into finding Davlin or founding Davlin? What drew you that direction? Well,
there was a couple of factors. The drug oxorolin takes ultraviolet light to activate it. Okay, and I was put in charge when I first started within weeks of starting with Elder. I was put in charge of their medical device division, which was just a machine sitting down on the end of the hall. And the impediments to getting into pharmaceuticals, it's an expensive business. Even back in 1981 was a huge impediment to getting in from a financial point of view. Back then, medical devices were fairly easy. Everything that you see over at Davlin, all the buildings, all the people, everything came from an investment of $5,000. That's all I invested in the company was $5,000.
Wow.
So it was much easier to get into medical devices. And I learned, within 2 or 3 years that I wanted to have my name on the building. I didn't want to work for anybody else. I wanted to be in charge of my own fate. And so probably 2.5 years in, 3 years in, I began looking for ways to take control of my own fate.
What were those early years like? Davlin's established in 1981. What were those early years like for you?
Oh, they were hell on wheels.
Yeah.
Just absolutely hell on wheels. I made every mistake in the book. I'm basically a salesman. And I should have started with a good engineer. I should have started with a money man. I should have started with a marketing person, leaving me to be the cheerleader, I guess, because that's essentially what I am, is the dreamer and the cheerleader. So we just made mistake after mistake after mistake that cost us money and time and prestige. We went back and fixed our mistakes, and that cost money. We started out as a distributor. All I wanted to do was to distribute, and I hired a company to actually build devices for us under a private label. And within months, not our fault that I know of anyway, that fell apart. So I was left with the choice of either going out of business or starting a manufacturing company. And there were a couple of people locally that just came to our rescue that helped us. Dick Green from Precision Metal Form. Dick, I think, just passed away just shy of his 100th birthday here, maybe a few months ago. But Dick, in a period of a couple of months, designed and built a machine that you can still see the DNA to this day in it. CE Electronics here in town stopped everything and built a control system for us. A lawyer in Toledo just took us under his wings and helped us stave off lawsuits from the company that was building the machines for us. So it was just a horrible, horrible, horrible period of time.
When did that start to turn? When did you feel like you started to maybe turn the corner?
Probably 6 or 7 years. One of the things that I learned was that it takes a certain amount of capital to be a distributor. You basically buy the machines and you sell them. To be a manufacturer, it probably takes 4 to 5 times as much capital, which we did not have. And I did not intuitively understand that. So it took us, I would say, maybe even 10 years to just accrue the capital that it takes to smoothly run a manufacturing operation. So they weren't easy years at all.
All right.
It was awful.
For people that are listening, maybe we ought to, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, describe everything it is that Davlin does.
We are basically a light company. We manufacture ultraviolet light devices that are used to treat various kinds of skin diseases. So we're a derm house. Virtually all of our customers are dermatologists or dermatological patients. We divide our business into 4 chunks. Doctors in the United States, distributors, doctors via distributors internationally, a service department, and then our consumer markets, which sells to home patients who use these lights in their home to treat. And the big diseases that we treat are psoriasis, vitiligo, which is Michael Jackson disease, and atopic eczema are the 3 main indications for what we do.
Okay. Growth started to happen, right? Both employee-wise and then even building-wise. So when did that start to occur for you? For those that don't know.
Well, at first we've had a number of different buildings. The first building was over on Trevitt Street, and then we moved to the building that the AmVets is currently located in, and I began to realize in 1986, I believe it was, that we were spending a lot of money when it took 8 people an hour to move steel out of the building so we could move other parts in. I realized that we were wasting a day. And so it was at that point that I decided to start thinking about expanding our facility, and wound up building our first building just in back of the Page Street location on an extension of BMet Street.
Where are we at now, employee-wise?
I think as of today, ballpark 110 people.
Okay. So as we sit here and speak, we're coming through a pandemic. We're coming through jobless rates that have been, and unemployment rates that have been sky high and not been good. And you hear of people that are always looking for business. You've been able, for the most part, I think, to sustain and if not add. What's been the secret in that?
Yes. COVID was good for Davlin. I probably shouldn't say that, but it was good for Davlin. One of our biggest customers is a company called Kaiser Permanente out on the West Coast. And they are what I call a vertically integrated healthcare company. So they have their own doctors, their own hospitals, their own clinics, and their own insurance companies. And about 7 years ago, they realized that they were spending a lot of money on biologicals, a pharmaceutical product for the treatment of psoriasis. And these biologicals can cost $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 per year per patient with not stellar results, 40 to 50% positive results, and some mighty intimidating side effects. Phototherapy does the same thing, but we're about 80 to 90% effective for a psoriasis patient. Maybe a sunburn is the worst side effect that you might get with light therapy, but we're a very, very small company. These biologics are basically companies with billions of dollars a year in sales. So, it's just Goliath versus David. But Kaiser was the first company to realize that by providing lights at a reasonable cost to their home phototherapy patients, they could save millions upon millions of dollars on biological drugs. So Tracy Hartman, who's our vice president of consumer markets, was the first gal to come into contact with Kaiser, and she negotiated a wonderful deal with them, and it kind of changed the face of Davlin to some degree. So when it came to the pandemic, probably about the middle of March, 2 years ago, Kaiser gave Tracy a telephone call and said, "Are you folks staying open?" Tracy came to me and said, "Are we staying open, Dave?" And I don't know. I hope so. We will do our best. So we went back to Kaiser because they said, "This is what we're going to do. We're going to close every one of our clinics, and we're going to give a free phototherapy device to every one of our patients that was using the clinics throughout California, throughout their system, which is, the West Coast, parts of Georgia, Colorado, and so forth." So suddenly, the 1st of April, we were in, and they said, "Stand by, because you're going to see an onslaught of business." And we saw an onslaught of business. I mean, it started probably in April of 2020, and it still hasn't stopped. So we went, I believe that in March of 2020, we had something like 67 employees, and we reached a high of 124. So we were hiring all the way through the pandemic. We worked all the way through the pandemic.
Yeah,
and it's
the way
what can you say?
Yeah.
It was certainly good for us and certainly good for our employees.
What's the future of your business? Where do you see this going, whether it be 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? What's the future of your business?
Well, I think it's unlimited because now a few companies are starting to when we look at Kaiser Permanente, we estimate that we may have saved them over $1 billion in cost from buying the biologics. And so our strategy, we have a number of strategies, but one of our strategies is to try to attract other vertically integrated healthcare companies, big ones, and tell them the story. And to some degree, we've been successful at that. We're getting more and more companies that want to reduce their dependence on the biologicals.
Where are you at now? Are you hands-on still? Or are you a little more
Well, I mean, I've always, from the beginning of the company, I've always been a salesman. So, and I always kind of specialized in the international part of the business. Although we have a vice president of international operations, but still, I've always taken long sales trips, 2, 3, 4 weeks sometimes. So all of my career, I've been able to take a month and go study Spanish in Costa Rica, go study Thai in Bangkok, take large amounts of time off, and I've found that the company runs just fine while I'm gone. My management philosophy is to more or less hire smart, good people, typically young people, and then get out of their way. Only step in when you hear the glass break. And so Davlin people, the top people over there, I think you'll find that they're very independent. They're not afraid to make decisions, to operate on their own. And it does mean that I do not have to be there every minute of the day. I'm kind of still the company dreamer. I like to look to the future.
Boy, and I just think about where you started, and I thought that's been one of the reasons why I wanted you to be a part of the podcast was I knew that through all forms of what you've done for a living, whether it be through work, it's opened up so many doors for you. And you mentioned to be able to still be that dreamer and to still be that world traveler that you've always wanted to be, because while you have everything invested in this company, it sounds like you have a ton of interests outside of this country or of this company as well.
Well, I mean, I always have. I've been involved in the Williams County Community Theater for probably 43 or 44 years now. I like to travel. When I was a kid, if you said, absolutely, what do you want to do for a living? I just said, I want to be a world-famous author. So I finally, a couple of years ago, I finally self-published. There's a huge distinction there. Self-published a couple of books. I've got a third that I just submitted for evaluation and potential editing and so forth. So that's kind of fun. I've always wanted to be, if not fluent in a foreign language, to be fluid. Be able to, get along, be able to say hello to people, find my way around in a foreign language. And I'm not. So that's one of my failures, but I keep trying. I can stumble around in German, French, Spanish, a couple words of Thai. But I would dearly love to really, really be fluent in a foreign language. Sometimes it's just the most empowering feeling in the world to be able to speak, speak in a different language.
Dave, do you have a favorite place that you go to on a semi-regular basis, or that you have been?
Well, a lot of people ask me that question, and the answer depends on what you're looking for. Just sheer exotic. Probably Thailand. I probably spent a year of my life cumulatively in Thailand. So, beautiful people and wonderful food and just exotic. If you want to just go somewhere that's sort of just the opposite of the United States, Thailand. Wonderful food, Malaysia, beautiful scenery, New Zealand, Switzerland, more great food, France, Italy, beautiful women, South Africa. Just depends on what you're interested in.
Yeah. You mentioned your 2 books. What did they cover?
Well, not knowing what I was doing, I wrote this book, and I figured the more words, the better. And so as soon as I submitted it to a publishing company, they said, "My God, this is way too wordy. This is 2 books." so I've learned my lesson there. When no one knows who you are, about 90,000 words is the maximum that you can get anybody to read. So I broke it in half. So one of them is the light seller. Me, I'm a light seller, basically LIGHT. I sell light for a living, and so that's sort of biographical. It, just from the things that made me who I am. The second book is Selling Light. That's more about dabbling, so a lot of stories. And I'm a storyteller. I love to tell stories, and so both of these books are basically stories.
So you've been now, over half of your adult life, you've been a resident of Bryan and Williams County, correct?
Absolutely.
So but not being from here originally, what about this area is appealing? Where can we get better?
Really, really good question. And I really love Bryan, Ohio. Bryan, Ohio has changed my life. I owe Bryan, Ohio a lot. And one of the things I realized, I could have started my company anywhere. I mean, I worked for Olivet Pharmaceuticals, but I could have gone to Ann Arbor, I could have gone to Chicago, I could have gone anywhere to start the company, but I chose to stay in Bryan because it's a prosperous, well-managed town. I live part-time in Manistee, Michigan. And Manistee, Michigan was once the wealthiest town in all of Michigan. They have big lumber barons and so forth up there. And the town is just full of beautiful old churches and downtown buildings and so forth. Honestly, they're kind of shabby. You see plywood on the outside, you see electrical wiring done badly. And when I think about Manistee, Michigan, compared to Bryan, Ohio is managed better. We don't do things, the powers to be, whoever they are. The town itself has a culture of doing things well. When we build a senior center, it's a very nice building. When we build a city building, it's a very nice building. There's nothing halfway about it. There's nothing half-baked about it. So I like that about the city of Bryan. And when I started the company, I realized that virtually everything that I needed to run a company, from manufacturing type people to marketing to accounting, was right here within a few miles of Bryan, Ohio. I mean, we buy almost all of our stuff, with some obvious exceptions, fairly locally. Maybe as far away as Toledo. A lot of our metal fabrications are done in Toledo. But the variety of skills, the variety of people, hardworking ethos, I was never tempted to take the company anywhere else. Periodically I've hired consultants to come in and my question is, how do I take this company to the next level? And they always come back with the same thing. Well, you got to move it to Ann Arbor, or you got to move it to Chicago, where you have a greater diversity of people. You can get, baloney. Just baloney. Mm-hmm. We can do it in Bryan, Ohio, and we have done it in Bryan, Ohio. Look at the companies. Look at the companies that have been here for years, prosper and have done well. And mine is relatively new compared to some of these companies, and we've done it. We've done it in Bryan, Ohio. Other
than master a language or two, what do you still want to do?
Well, at my age, the things that I want to do are pretty specific. I'd like to take the train from Cape Town, South Africa, to the Victoria Falls in Uganda, I believe, wherever it is. I'm not sure of the country, but it's supposedly a wonderful train with great food and luxurious appointments, and it just takes you on a 2.5-week, 3-week meander up through the most beautiful places of Africa. That's one of the things that I want to do.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
It really does. Hey, we appreciate you taking time to visit with us today to talk about your life, your career. It's been a fun time. I have some speed round questions if you'd be willing to jump. Put you in the hot seat a little bit. Okay. I think you can handle it, though. You're pretty good on your feet. If you had to pick your favorite word in the English language, what would your favorite word be?
Penultimate.
Penultimate.
I don't know. It's just a cool word. Hardly anyone knows what the heck it means, but man, is it useful sometimes.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Least favorite word?
Very.
Very.
I find that as you, particularly when you write, that you have you have literary tics, and you have little things like sort of, very, that you just use over and over and over again. And very is one of them. I'll bet you when I write something, I'll bet you I'll take out 1,000 varies. So that's my least favorite word.
Okay.
Because I use it all the time.
Sound or noise that you love?
I love the sound of the hubbub in a big downtown hotel lobby, a businessman's lobby of a big major hotel where you just hear all kinds of different languages being spoken, exotic-looking people. And it's fun to just sit there and listen to that cacophony, I guess you'd say, and to wonder, what are all these people doing? What's their story? Where do they come from? What do they do? I love that sound.
That's good noise. Sound or noise that you would hate?
I don't know. Television's in the background. I hate that.
Okay. I don't know. We may have covered this a little bit, but I'm going to ask it just to be official. What profession other than your own would you love to have attempted? Or still love to attempt?
Well, I would love to be an author. I mean, that would be very cool to be an author. I think some people are just born to be authors and some are not, and I'm beginning to realize that maybe I'm not, with the basic skills to do well at that just aren't there. But it is kind of satisfying, even if you know it's not all that good a book, to see something that you wrote sitting on a shelf somewhere. It's pretty satisfying. So that I would like to do. I guess if they ran me out of town, I'd probably try to get a job driving a bread truck. You know, bread's fairly light, so it wouldn't be tough. And you get out and you see the world and you drive around. So maybe that's my next career is driving a bread truck somewhere.
In another life.
In another life.
There you go. Last one.
Sure.
How would you like to be remembered?
Oh, that's fairly easy. I guess I'd like to be remembered as somebody who had the opportunity to influence people's lives positively and did it to some degree.
Well, on behalf of, I think I can speak on behalf of the city of Bryan and Williams County, thank you for choosing us as your home, because I know having Davlin in the community has been an amazing thing for a lot of people. Both in the county, in the city, and obviously outside, and touched a lot of lives with the work that not only you have done, but are continuing to do on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to visit with us. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed listening. You're a fascinating guy. I knew this would be a great podcast. I know my goal as I sit here is, what can I learn from before we started to when we ended? And I think this has been very much a very learning experience for me.
Well, if I can just say one more thing to anybody that might be out there listening. If you are the shy kid who sits in the back of the classroom and gets C's, there's hope for you. There really is. Doesn't mean a darn thing. You can do whatever you want to do. I was the shy kid who sat in the back of this classroom, who got C's in school, who nobody paid particular attention to, non-athletic and all this kind of stuff. And you can be that kid and still do good things in the world. You can make the world come to you.
Yeah.
You can.
Dave, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Dave Swanson, the founder of Davlin here in Bryan, our guest here on this edition of the podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and took something away from it as well. Stick around for the next one that is coming here, 15 Minutes with Andy. Thank you so much for your time today and have a great day.